NXT TakeOver 25, the 25th NXT TakeOver special, continued the streak of excellent takeovers. I have yet to see a bad one. It's kind of like Breaking Bad. Once I got into that series, never saw a bad episode of Breaking Bad, which is ironic. The word bad is in the name of the show. Some episodes were better than others, but I never can honestly say that I ever saw a bad episode. So TakeOver just continues to produce some of the best wrestling shows that you'll find anywhere. These guys and the girls, even though I thought their match was the weakest, but these folks looked like they had a little something extra to prove tonight. And I truly believe that if there is competition of any kind, and competition is in the eyes of the fans, right? So there's no reason these organizations can't coexist, and you can like all sorts of wrestling from all different organizations. But it's fun to compare this product to that product, or to look at it and say, hey, there's competition, or even friendly competition. If there's competition of any kind, it's pretty obvious after last night, to me anyway. The real competition is not between AEW and WWE's main roster. The real competition is between NXT and AEW. In terms of talent that they compete for, that they compete to sign, and in terms of those hardcore, call them smart fans if you want to, even though I hate that word. But that, to me, is where the real competition is. The audience, I think, between those two, mirror each other's a lot more than AEW and the main roster does. So that's where the real competition is. Now, the Twitter poll results so far, the poll is still up. It will be for a couple more days. If you have not yet voted, you can do so on my Twitter, at Solomonster. Well over 2,000 votes so far. 94% thumbs up, 6% thumbs down. I don't know what those 6% were expecting. I don't know what those 6% were looking for, but you and I cannot be friends. That's all I can say after this poll. You cannot be friends after this. Visually, I thought this show, it looked like they had the same lighting as what they used for the Evolution pay-per-view last year, which looked a little bit different because I don't think they kind of flew in their usual, or used their usual lighting equipment. It kind of looked a little darker. It looked almost like a house show in a way. That's what this show kind of looked like to me. Not that I had a problem with it. I thought it looked fine, but it was very dark. Even though people were tweeting me, they said, are they darkening it because the building is half empty? As far as I know, the building was packed. If it wasn't sold out, it was close to sold out. So that wasn't the issue. I think and they've done this before with other takeover specials. I think it's a Triple H thing. It's something to separate, or set it apart from the main roster. And I think they do it because they want to keep the focus more on the in-ring action. So you're not looking at the crowd, you're not looking at signs, you're not looking at the video screens. The video screens have nothing but the logo on it. So your focus is strictly on the ring, and I think that's why they do it. Show opened with Roderick Strong against Matt Riddle. One of the best WWE matches, one of the best matches, period, all year. A fantastic opener with great wrestling and a hot crowd. What more can you ask for? This is what you want in a hot opener to your show, to your pay-per-view. Riddle kicked his flip-flops off right in Roddy's face to start the match. Towards the end here, he had a superplex by Roddy for a near fall. Riddle went for a moonsault. Strong put his knees up, though, on the way down. Riddle came back with a knee to the head and a power bomb. Another knee to the head for a near fall. Roddy hit a powerbomb for a near fall, countered that then when Matt kicked out into a Boston Crab. And he even put the knee in Riddle's back, like the old school lion tamer. Riddle got onto his back, threw some kicks at Roddy, went for the Bromission. Roddy got to his feet, and Riddle blasted him with a series of MMA elbows and hit a cradle tombstone for the win. Again, this was just a fantastic match, bell to bell. I especially loved it down the stretch because Strong is just such a great wrestler. Personality-wise, he's not exactly the most charismatic guy they have. Although I think him in Undisputed Era was the best thing that ever happened to him. But just in terms of pro wrestling and watching a guy who's not just great at it, but makes it look real. He lays his shit in, looks snug, looks like, you wouldn't want to be in the ring with this guy. There are very few people in that company, NXT or the main roster, better than Roderick Strong. And you throw in Matt Riddle, and you guys know I'm a big fan of him. I go on and on about how I think the sky's the limit for Matt Riddle. And to the point where some people say, oh, you talk about this guy too much. I don't see what the big deal is. I would hope, unless you're just completely biased against the guy or you're trying to prove a point because you're wrong, but there's no turning back now. I don't see how after the work he's put in so far in NXT and after this match here, that you cannot admit that Matt Riddle is quite good. This was awesome. Fatal 4-way ladder match for the vacant NXT Tag Team titles. The Street Profits, the Forgotten Sons of Anarchy, Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish of Undisputed Era. The Viking War Raider Experience surrendered their NXT Tag Team titles after they were promoted to the main roster, and then they promptly vanished from television. We have not seen them on TV in weeks. Now, I don't have an issue with guys not being on television every week. In fact, I've advocated before, you don't have to have every one of the big names and the big stars on television every single week. It's kind of like the old days. Superstars and Wrestling Challenge and even Monday Night Raw if you go way, way back. There were some middle of the card guys, upper card guys. They weren't on the show every week. So when they did show up, it meant something. It was more special. I don't have an issue with going back to those days. But it's been a few weeks. And these guys are brand new to the main roster, brand new name, right? They're trying to get over in front of a new audience. You're trying to establish them. And for weeks and weeks to go by without acknowledging them, without them showing up, it's kind of hard to build any momentum. It's kind of hard to get your moves over. Back then when a guy would debut, he'd be on TV pretty much every week, or maybe you skip a week, but you got to get his moves over. That's how you get a character established. That's how you get them over with the audience. And I don't know, a couple more weeks, you may have to put their faces on the side of a milk carton. But anyway, so they vacated the championships. Undisputed Era. Poor Kyle O'Reilly. I don't know what to say about this guy. They grabbed the ladder outside the ring early on in the match. So they're both holding this ladder. And Wesley Blake of the Forgotten Sons does a tope, or as Morrow would say, tope suicida, through the ropes. But he doesn't just do a tope through the ropes. He launches it. This was like a King Cuerno tope from back in the Lucha Underground days. This guy launched himself through the ropes and hit the ladder. He struck the ladder head first. I'm pretty sure he cut himself open on that. The referees put the gloves on. He wasn't bleeding profusely or anything, but I don't see how he couldn't have cut himself open or knock himself out. So that was pretty brutal. A few minutes later, we've got Fish and O'Reilly there on the ladder in the ring. They're trying to make a play for the tag team belts to pull him down. And Blake comes in, pushes the ladder over. O'Reilly landed hard on the side of the ladder with his lower back on the way down. And Blake and Cutler, they got the ladder. And they put the ladder kind of in their heads, right? They did the spot where they got the ladder horizontal and they're holding it and they're kind of, they're turning around. So anybody in the way of the ladder is going to get struck. So they've got the ladder in their heads and they're ramming people left and right. And Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan come into the ring. And they grab each of them from behind to give them a German suplex. And in doing so, the ladder goes flying. And it almost killed Kyle O'Reilly. He was down on the mat, didn't even see it coming. It almost landed right, I think it was Kyle O'Reilly. It almost landed right on top of him. This guy escaped death many times here in this match. And I think O'Reilly is going to need Dr. Britt Baker when he gets back home or wherever he is now. Looked to me like he may have lost a tooth here in this match. In fact, somebody tweeted me and said that the tooth was still flopping around in the ring during the North American title match. I don't know if that's true or not, but it looked like he lost a tooth. He wouldn't have to look very far because Britt Baker was in the crowd last night. She was there showing her support for Adam Cole in the main event. So she was there. People are like, oh, how'd she sneak in? I'm surprised they let her in. Why wouldn't they let her in? She's in a relationship with one of the top performers on the brand. I don't think it's a big deal. Is she banned from the building or something? I mean, look, the war hasn't gotten that nasty yet. Maybe in due time it will. But she can buy a ticket and go wherever the hell she wants to go. So Morrow, in the midst of all this, he used a line that I popped for you. He used the "Oh my God, they killed Kyle" line, kind of a little takeoff of South Park there. And his lower back, Kyle O'Reilly, was all bloody. It was all cut up and just ripped to shreds. This guy took, I mean, everybody in this match took so much abuse, way too much abuse. But Kyle O'Reilly in particular, it's amazing this guy was able to walk off on his own when this thing was over. This guy is just out of his mind. O'Reilly got powerbombed into the ladder. Bobby Fish fell off the ladder on top of Kyle O'Reilly, who had already fallen off. We had Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch doing a Doomsday Device on one of the Sons of Anarchy, Forgotten Son, whatever. I call them the Forgotten Sons of Anarchy because that's what they remind me of. But he gave a Doomsday Device to one of them. They landed right on their head. Did a complete rotation, landed right on their head. Meanwhile, the Street Profits also connected with their own Doomsday Device of sorts, with Montez Ford coming off the top with a giant blockbuster. So a lot of action going on here in this match. So now Jackson Riker, the former Gunner from TNA, he comes down to the ring. And he's all pissed off. He's attacking pretty much everybody in sight. Everybody who's not a member of his own team. He is laying them all out. And Kyle O'Reilly gets back in the ring, and he goes after Riker, and Fish comes in. And soon, you've got Undisputed Era. You've got Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. You've got everybody, except the Forgotten Sons, are beating this guy down. And they grab a ladder, and they're slamming the ladder over and over and over again onto his back. It's just a gang attack here. It's a gang assault to beat down Jackson Riker. And then they go back to fighting each other. And Riker gets back. He's outside the ring. He gets back to his feet. Montez Ford, who it's almost unfair how athletic this guy is. And still, I would wager, in this company and maybe in all of wrestling, the best looking frog splash of anybody that I have seen in pro wrestling. But he did a giant running cannonball dive out of the ring and kind of landed on top of Riker. Riker didn't really do a whole lot to catch him, but he took him out with that big dive. And then Oney Lorcan did a dive of his own out onto Riker on the floor. So that wiped him out. Burch and Lorcan, they set a ladder up in the ring. They go for to retrieve the titles. Fish and O'Reilly, they come back in and cut them off. And they set another ladder over next. So now we got two ladders side by side. Both teams are up on the ladder, reaching for the titles, beating the hell out of each other. And all of a sudden, Blake and Cutler, they come back inside. They push the ladders over, and the people booed because they thought, well, this is it. The Sons are going to climb the ladder and win the titles, and we don't like these two fucking guys. They're boring. We forgot you. They were chanting that earlier when Jackson Riker came out. We forgot you. I legitimately did forget about this guy. So the people are not happy. And all of a sudden, Angelo Dawkins crawls back into the ring, and he charges kind of underneath the ladders, almost through the ladders, and spears down one of the Sons. And going underneath that ladder is bad luck. He should know that. All of a sudden, Montez Ford comes out of nowhere. He stuck the landing from the top rope onto the ladder. And not only did he make just this perfect leap from the top rope onto the ladder, just completely smooth and seamless, and he lands on the ladder. But as soon as he lands, he is just staring Blake dead in his eyes before he knocks him off the ladder. And Montez Ford yanks down both tag team title belts. The Street Profits are your new NXT Tag Team Champions. A well-deserved win. The only correct outcome to this match. This was it. It was now or never for these guys. And I was hoping they wouldn't do what they did with Kaz and Enzo, who were also a very popular, very overact on NXT before they were promoted to the main roster. And it would have been a big reaction if on one of those Brooklyn shows, for instance, they would have put the tag team titles on them. And they never did. They teased it, but they never put the titles on those two. In fact, between NXT and the main roster, as over as they were, it's kind of hard to believe that Kaz and Enzo never won tag team titles in WWE. I was hoping the Street Profits would not fall into that same category. They deserve to have this big win. People, I think, have been waiting for this for a while. They're a popular act, and this was the only correct outcome to this match. I was very happy to see this. All of these guys deserve hazard pay for that match. That was one, I'm not exaggerating here, that was one of the more brutal physical ladder matches that I have ever seen. And I would not want to be Kyle O'Reilly this morning. I wouldn't want to be him at all this weekend. But especially waking up in the morning, if he's even able to move around, I'm sure that's going to suck for him. Tyler Breeze against the Velveteen Dream for the NXT North American title. Per Triple H, earlier in the week, Tyler Breeze is officially back on the NXT roster where he belongs. Like a dog who is kicked around and abused by their new owner. He has been rescued. By the way, Savage Tweet of the Week, I have a note here, goes to Walmart. I never thought I would say that on this show, although I'd like it better if one day I can say that Savage Tweet of the Week is sponsored by Walmart, if anybody from Walmart happens to be listening. In the build-up to this match with Breeze, Velveteen Dream called him a great value version of himself. And as one of our own listeners, Joey, pointed out, Great Value is the name of a Walmart discount brand. So Dream basically called Tyler Breeze a discount Velveteen Dream. Enter the official Walmart account on Twitter, which tweeted this out to its nearly 1 million followers. Prince Pretty was Velveteen Dream back when Patrick Clark was sitting in hot tubs on Tough Enough. That kind of came out of nowhere. It almost makes me want to go shop at Walmart. But then I remember the lines there, and then I come to my senses. So it's really, look, anybody who has listened to this podcast, going back to the early days when I started doing NXT reviews in whatever it was, 2012 or 2013, you know how much of a Tyler Breeze fan I was back then. I was just a big fan of the character, and I became a big fan of his work, and he was involved in some, takeover. I don't know if it was a takeover at the time. I don't even know if it was takeover at the time. I guess they would have been takeovers. But the big NXT events, the early ones, like after Arrival, he had some pretty damn memorable performances. He never won the championship. He never won any championship in NXT. But I was a big fan of his work. And I was very underwhelmed by what they did with him initially when they brought him to the main roster. I felt like they never really gave him a fair shake. I never expected him to become a headliner or a world champion or anything, but surely they could have done a lot more with it. And you could say that about almost every single fucking person that they call up from NXT. And some will make it, and some will go on to become big stars. And the vast majority will not. And it's not because they don't have the talent. You can almost use the analogy of baseball. And I saw some crazy statistic once that said something like 95%, or some ridiculous number like that, of minor league baseball players in single A, double A, triple A will never make it to the major leagues. Like this huge number. They will play for years and dedicate their lives, but they will never make it to the big leagues. Because it's the big leagues. You've got to be among the elite to be in Major League Baseball. Or at least in theory, that's the theory anyway. So you can argue something similar for wrestling and say, well, not everybody in NXT is necessarily main roster material. Not everybody can hang with the big boys. Or if they're over in NXT, they may not be able to get over in front of a mainstream audience. Although in a lot of cases when people say that, I think that's bullshit. That's just an excuse for the people who are writing for them or booking them, who don't know what the fuck to do with half these people. Tyler Breeze deserved better. And to his credit, him and Fandango, they got their act over for a while. Then Fandango got hurt. And Tyler Breeze has been sitting around doing a whole lot of nothing. So to me, it made all the sense in the world to bring him back to NXT, to promote him back to NXT. And to see him back in his element and getting the kind of, ovation he got on this show and having real meaningful wrestling match. And what I thought was a very good match here. Not the best match on the show, but a very good match against Velveteen Dream. Put a smile on my face. He needed that, I think. And he had a big smile on it, and nobody, I'm sure, was happier than he was. And Triple H. I get the sense that Triple H is a big advocate of his. I'm sure Triple H looked at what they did with him on the main roster and probably shook his head. But what can he do? So it was cool to see him back in. A Velveteen Dream came out doing I think he was dressed up like Prince. At least I think he was. He had the third eye, the third lens in the middle of his forehead. And I said once on an episode of the podcast here that it's been many years since I've seen the old reverse tombstone spot or the old reverse tombstone sequence with two guys. Undertaker did it a bunch of times many years ago in some of his older matches where he'll, let's say, get somebody up in the tombstone position. They'll wiggle and fall backwards, and they'll have Undertaker up in a position for a tombstone. And then they'll wiggle and they'll fall backwards, and now Undertaker has the one I always remember is from a pay-per-view match that Undertaker had with Stone Cold Steve Austin before Stone Cold really took off. It was in May of '97 at one of the In Your House pay-per-views. And they had a match. It was one of the early pay-per-view matches, maybe the first pay-per-view match those two had. And I vividly remember that sequence at the end of that match. That was a hot sequence. Undertaker hit the tombstone. Hart Foundation ran in. I still remember it like it was yesterday. It's over 20 years ago now. So it's been a while since I've seen that sequence. And of all people, of all matches, it was these two to bust it out here in this match. Although in the end, for all the reversals they had here, neither man actually hit the move. Especially, and look, they're not going to hit that move. Especially in a week, we're less than a week away from a show in Saudi Arabia where The Undertaker is wrestling. Nobody is using that tombstone on a WWE show this week. Breeze hit the Unprettier for a near fall. Beauty shot, kick connects. Dream rolled out to the floor. And the referee's counting, and it looks like referee might count out Velveteen Dream. Tyler Breeze gets back inside around the 8 count and pleads with the referee. Says, look, if you count him out, I can't win. You knows you count him out, he can't win the championship. But when he goes back to the ropes to reach out and grab Dream, Dream has the North American title, tries to hit him with it. Breeze stops him, takes the title out of his hands. And all of this is enough to distract him long enough where Velveteen Dream catches him with a Dream Valley driver, quickly goes up to the top, hits the Purple Rainmaker elbow, and secures the win. Again, I thought this was a very good match. It fell a couple of steps short of the earlier ones. It was going to be very difficult for anything to follow that ladder match, and it just so happened to be the two of them. But still very good, and Tyler's best match in forever. I mean, maybe years. And after the match, he took a selfie in the ring on his phone with Dream. I thought he was going to attack him, but he never did. And it just felt there was a certain finality about it to me. I mean, I guess they could bring it back and keep this thing going and have more matches, although I don't see what the point is, being that he beat him fair and square, unless the idea is that maybe on television this week or whenever they're back at Full Sail, maybe Tyler will go heel again, which I would be totally fine with, because the Tyler Breeze character should be a heel. It was built to be a heel. And I'd like for him to get the furry boots back too, which he didn't have on this show. So we'll see where they go with this. We got a brief vignette for Damian Priest, the former Punishment Martinez in Ring of Honor. Damian Priest is his new name. It showed him getting a new tattoo and walking down a hallway. And he's a big guy. He's a tall guy. Very athletic. I think he should do well. Then again, I've said the same thing about Donovan Dijak. He's been out with a knee injury. But these are big guys, but they're athletic. They're not big lumbering guys who are just big. And they're going to get pushed just because they're big. These guys can go. They've got talent. And I don't doubt that NXT will be able to use them. Of course, beyond NXT, who the fuck knows? Shayna Baszler defending her NXT Women's Championship against Io Shirai. Very good match. I had this on my list as the weakest of all the ones on this show. The one that I would rank last. And that's not a reflection of it being a bad match. It's a reflection of the quality of the other matches being so great. You know, there's always got to be that one match that goes at the bottom of the heap. And on this show, it was the women. Io went up top and hit a moonsault at one point on the floor on Shayna. Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke ran out to help Shayna. But Candice LeRae came out as well, armed with a kendo stick, and she beat the piss out of these two women, to the point where there were pieces that were split off of the kendo stick laying on the ground. She was hitting them so hard with it. So she came out to sort of even the odds. In the ring, Shayna avoided a moonsault, another one, by Io Shirai. Hit Shirai with a forearm, went for the Kirifuda clutch. Shirai turned it into a pin for a near fall. And she ended up getting her in the choke. And Io fought and fought and fought, desperately trying to fight out of this choke. But in the end, before she can pass out, she decided to tap out. And so Shayna Baszler retains her NXT Women's Championship. And when she won People wanted very badly for Io not to tap. Reach the ropes. Don't tap. Don't tap. And when she tapped, there was legitimate heel heat for Shayna winning this match. People, I mean, the boos were loud. The boos were very real for Shayna Baszler winning this match. And then Io Shirai snapped. And she grabbed a kendo stick and she went to work on Shayna Baszler. She was whipping the hell out of her with this kendo stick. And Nigel McGuinness on commentary just talks about, what a poor display of sportsmanship by Io Shirai. It was almost, you're listening to the announcer say that. And it's almost like, well, is she turning heel? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure she wasn't, but you would almost think that she was. Talking about what a poor sport she was. And she goes up to the top rope for a moonsault. And she looks down and she sees Candice LeRae. Well, actually, she hits a moonsault, but she goes back up top. She sees Candice LeRae outside the ring and she's motioning to her, like she wants her to hand her something. And Candice reaches under the ring and pulls out a steel chair. And she reaches up and gives it to Io, and Io hits a moonsault with she's like a Sabu move here. She holds the chair against her body and hits a moonsault with the chair down onto Shayna Baszler. And shout out to the Las Vegas Fight Shop on Twitter, who said, those Joshi wrestlers may look cute in their colorful outfits, but deep down, they're psycho. Ain't that the truth? Go watch Io and Kairi Sane kicking Pentagon's ass in Lucha Underground. So this, to me, though, this was just done. This was not meant to foreshadow some kind of a heel turn or anything like that. I think this is just meant to lead to one more match, at least one more match between Io and Shayna, whether it's on TV or the next TakeOver show, whenever that may be. Some kind of a stipulation match, maybe a kendo stick match, or some kind of a hardcore or extreme rules type of stipulation. I would expect that to be what this is setting up for. They had an ad for the next NXT TakeOver UK show. It's called NXT TakeOver Cardiff in Wales. The date? August 31st. The same day as the AEW All Out pay-per-view in Chicago. And you're going to tell me that the real competition ain't between these two? The NXT brand, not just NXT UK, NXT in general, and AEW? Don't be a fool. And in that case, let me just say, because people were asking me, I'll chime in here on this. Between Double or Nothing last weekend and TakeOver 25, I loved them both. We were very blessed to have two great wrestling shows here on back-to-back weekends, but of the two, TakeOver wins. I'm not going to say it's not close, but TakeOver wins between those two. They showed Stephanie McMahon in the crowd. She was applauding. She got her cameo on camera. And as she is smiling and she's clapping, I guess she's looking up at the screen and she could see the fans behind her. And she starts happily pointing at a man behind her wearing a purple Macho Man Randy Savage shirt. And I died when I saw this. Obviously, that wasn't her intent. She's just pointing at the fans. But I saw that, and it was just too perfect. Just too perfect. So then we have the main event. Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano for the NXT Championship in a rematch from what I consider to be the greatest NXT match of all time that they had in Brooklyn a few months ago. Could they find a way somehow to top that match? Well, I may need some time to answer that question. It's close, but I still think I give the edge to their match in New York. The thing about the match in New York was, not just because I was there in the building, which always feels, more special when you're in that kind of atmosphere, but it was just such a long time to pay off that Johnny Gargano. So it had been 2 years of this guy chasing after the NXT title and being denied and losing and being screwed over and being betrayed and everything that happened to this guy. It was such a long story arc, and they weren't able to close it the right way, because it really should have been Gargano beating Ciampa for the championship. Although, again, what we ended up with, in my opinion, was the greatest NXT match I've ever seen. So, not a bad consolation prize. But the story going into that New York match was just so long. And the payoff was great. You had the babyface, the heroic babyface, And they booed Gargano a little bit at the beginning during the intros to that match, just like they did on this TakeOver show. There were notable boos for him when they introduced him, and Adam Cole was wildly cheered. And yet, in both cases, the New York match and the match here in Bridgeport, by the end, although people were very happy to see Adam Cole win, Gargano had won them over because he is great at his job. He is great at what he does. He can tell a story in the ring. He's the underdog, and he's got to scratch and claw and fight his way back. And even when people are booing him and may like the other guy more, he just has this innate ability to win people over. So everything about that match in New York, with him finally winning the big one, I just feel like I've got to give that the edge over this match. But again, maybe in due time, when I have some time to process all this, my mind will change. Josiah Williams. He sang Adam Cole down to the ring. He started a series a while back online called Wrestle and Flow, where he remixes wrestler theme songs. WWE signed him back in April, and here he is. He goes from remixing entrance themes on the internet to rapping Adam Cole down to the ring. That's pretty fucking cool. The story here was Cole kicking Gargano's leg out from underneath him. He kicked his leg out of his leg about 10 minutes into this. And that factored into the rest of the match, including the finish, was Gargano's bum knee. Gargano went for a suicide dive. Cole caught him with a super kick, though, in mid-flight. This was... we've seen Cole do this before. Ricochet, right? Coming off the ropes. A moonsault off the ropes. Perfect timing on the super kick, kicking Ricochet in the face. This wasn't quite as cool as that spot was. But he kicked him at just the right time. He hit a Panama Sunrise, not Code Red. What's the Canadian Destroyer? I'm getting my names mixed up here. But he calls it the Panama Sunrise. He hit it at ringside, rolled Gargano back inside the ring, got a near fall. And so now he's talking shit to Gargano. You got your moment. Now it's my time. He went for the last shot, the running knee off the ropes. Gargano was able to dodge it, and Cole put Gargano in his own submission hold. He put him in the Gargano escape. Gargano broke the hold. He escaped. I thought there was no escape. Isn't that what it's called? The Gargano escape? Well, he found a way to escape his own move. And instead, he returned the favor. He gave Adam Cole a knee to the back of his head for another near fall. So again, I'm sure that when I go and I check people's opinions on my timeline and everything, I did a little bit of that last night, but I didn't have time to go through all the comments. But I'm willing to bet the people who disliked their match in New York because it was a kick-out fest. That's all it was. They kicked out a big move after big move. It was a kick-out fest. My guess is those same people, if you hated that match for all the kickouts, you probably didn't like this match much better. And hey, to each their own. I don't know what to tell you. I said, that bothers me sometimes. And actually, there was one thing that really annoyed me in this match I'll get to in a second. So I get it. There are... And I can't explain why it bothers me in some cases and not others. And it's not a WWE, it's a WWE thing or a Lucha Underground thing. It depends, if you're watching a company you don't like, you're not going to like. It has nothing to do with that. Yeah, some matches, depending on how many times it's done, how it's done, the story being told, sometimes I can let it slide. And then other times it just annoys the shit out of me, where guys are just kicking out of big moves left and right, and it means nothing. But I never felt that way in either one of these matches. It never really rose to the level where I felt like it ruined the match for me. Even though there were a shit ton of kickouts here in this match as well. So Cole, he ended up running into a super kick from Gargano. And he followed up with a reverse Rana. So Gargano hit a reverse Rana, spiked Adam Cole headfirst down into the mat. And Cole no-sold it. He no-sold it. He got right back up after he was spiked on his head. Now, he got up. Gargano stayed on his knees. He's the one who hit the move. He stayed on his knees, and I watched him. And he was just looking behind him, waiting for Adam Cole to hit him with a move. And that's the only thing that really bothered me or aggravated me during this match, was that one move, that one spot that just looked incredibly fake. I mean, you can say that about a lot of the stuff on this show, I guess. But that, for whatever reason, is the one thing that really stuck in my craw. It's like, dude, you just spiked this guy in his head and he just pops up like it means nothing and you're just going to sit there on your knees and wait until he hits you in the back of your head with a knee? What the fuck is wrong with you? You deserve to lose. He got a near fall out of it, Cole did. Cole pulled a chair out from underneath the ring. Referee told him, look, you can't use this chair. I'm going to disqualify you. And Drake Wirtz is outside arguing with Adam Cole. All of a sudden, here comes Johnny Gargano with a tope through the ropes. And I think what happened, I think Cole pulled the referee in the way. And Gargano inadvertently took out the referee. So we got a ref bump here in this match. And Cole, he took a swing. He swung and missed with the chair. Gargano super kicked the chair back into his face and rolled him into the ring. And Johnny Gargano got a visual pin on Adam Cole. But there was no referee. Fans are counting 1, 2. They counted all the way to 11 or 12. No referee. He goes outside. Gargano rolls Drake Wirtz back inside. And with the referee out, Gargano, before he gets back in the ring, he looks up. He sees Adam Cole. Adam Cole is sitting in the ring and he's motioning for somebody to come out. Obviously motioning for Undisputed Era to come out from the back. And Gargano picks up a chair and he braces himself. He turns around and he's waiting. He's the welcoming committee. He's waiting for them to come out. Nobody comes out. So he goes to get back into it. It was all just a diversion, though. He goes to get back in the ring. Cole immediately runs over. Hits him with, it was like a pile driver type move or DDT type move. As he's climbing back through the ropes, he got a near fall out of it. Cole set up again for the last shot. Gargano just fell face flat on the mat. Kind of like when Diesel went to powerbomb Bret Hart at the end of their match at Survivor Series 95. What happened? He just collapsed in a heap. Although, as it turned out, Bret Hart was playing possum. And he ended up rolling up Diesel for the win. And then Diesel mouthed, what do you say, motherfucker or something? I think he mouthed into the camera. This is in 1995, mind you. And Diesel turned heel. Hit Bret Hart with a couple of power bombs when the match was over. But anyway, I don't know, these random wrestling memories. Like, I could see a spot or a certain move executed in a match, and it just automatically, like, boom, it takes me back to a match 25 years ago or 22 years ago. It's just weird. The memory bank I have for these things. And yet I can't remember things that happened on Raw 2 weeks ago, so go figure. So, he falls face flat on the mat. Gargano is just, he is done. He is exhausted. He is out. Cole picks him up. And he's talking shit to him. And Gargano, though, gets him in the Gargano escape. So he, too, apparently was playing possum. Cole tries to roll out of the hole. Gargano holds on. He will not let go. Cole manages to punch his way free. And he's kicking away and punching away at Gargano's injured knee. And he's kicking the knee. He gives the knee some super kicks. And he hits the... he goes for the Panama Sunrise. Didn't hit it the first time, but he went for it a second time. And the second time, he connected with it. And then he hit the last shot to the back of Johnny's head, and he scored the pin. Over 30 minutes later, and it is, in my opinion, much like their first match, one of the all-time great TakeOver main events. Adam Cole is your new NXT, for the first time, NXT World Champion. And Kyle O'Reilly comes out, Bobby Fish comes out with his arm in a sling, so I don't know if that's storyline. I assume it's real. Hopefully it's nothing serious, because he came back not too long ago from, I think, a knee injury. So Bobby Fish had his arm in his sling, and Roderick Strong came out. They're all celebrating to close out the show. So Johnny Gargano, in his very first title defense since winning the championship in New York, loses the NXT championship. He is truly the Sasha Banks of NXT. But it was all about the chase with Gargano. 2 years. And we got the big payoff in New York. And he won the championship. And now, it's Adam Cole's time. And Johnny can chase again. And when he loses, they can move on to somebody else. And I think that somebody else should be Matt Riddle. Because if they have no plans of calling him up to the main roster, and I'm not quite sure why I'd even want him there at this point, he has been primed. He's gotten some big wins. He has proven himself. He's had some great matches so far this year. The fans seem to like him. They seem to dig him. He's had his issues. He's had matches with Adam Cole recently. I think Matt Riddle would make for a fine next contender. Maybe even at the next TakeOver show for the NXT title. But overall, an absolute thumbs up effort. Again, an overwhelmingly positive response in the Twitter poll. there seems to be a formula. It's a formula that just works for NXT. You know, the show does not overstay its welcome. 2.5 hours. Boom. Out. That's it. 2.5 hours. Not even a full 3 hours. 5, maybe 6 matches on each show. And every single match has something different to offer. Whether it's a stipulation match, whether it's just a straight wrestling match. They go out there, they bust their asses, they get hot crowds, the people are into it, they buy into it. They believe in these characters. They can get behind these characters. They follow their progress like a Velveteen Dream. We're seeing this guy develop before our very eyes. He's racked up a whole bunch of big wins. Matt Riddle hasn't lost very many matches so far in NXT, but he lost to the Velveteen Dream. That was a big win they gave him. And every single win, every single takeover, he's establishing himself more and more. Because at the end of the day, we have to remember that this is still, to some degree, a developmental brand, even though Triple H has said that it's not really developmental anymore, but it kind of is. And we're getting to see some of these guys grow up. For all the indie talent they've snatched up, there are still some guys in there who are either originals to NXT, or maybe they did a little bit of indies, but they never really established, their name. And so this is the first time we're really getting exposure to them and their characters, and NXT just seems to be firing right now on all cylinders. And they've got so much talent stockpiled down there in Orlando that we haven't even seen. Or you've got guys like, again, Donovan Dijak, who is out with a knee injury, but he'll be back soon. Punishment Martinez is about to debut. Keith Lee, he was out with a minor injury. Now he's back, and they've got to kind of work him back in there. He's a talent as well. And tons of other guys I'm not even thinking of. Kushida they just signed recently. He just debuted. So I think there's a lot to look forward to as far as the future of NXT. And now more than ever, as awful as the main roster is, I think a lot of people, a lot of longtime WWE fans who find themselves disenfranchised with the main roster, they can at least look to NXT. And it is astounding to me. I say this every time, but it is astounding to me when I watch these takeover shows that I think to myself, this is the same company that produces Monday Night Raw and SmackDown every single week. How is that possible? And I know the answer, but it still astounds me that the same company that can so badly botch their shows on television every single week, and they don't seem to know what they're doing, things don't make sense. I mean, just one shit show after another, is the same company that can put on some of the best wrestling that you will find anywhere all year long. Jekyll and Hyde, night and day. Astounding.